everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a nice little flow to open up our hips, work on our flexibility a little bit. There's going to be a little balance, it should be fun. So, hey, let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start in a nice easy pose or Sukhasana. We're going to work on our posture, relaxing our shoulders. And start to notice your breath. Don't change it at all, but just gently notice the regular patterns of your inhales and exhales. You can relax your hands under your knees as you just start to notice it and feel how it's affecting your body. We're then going to place one hand on our chest, one hand on our stomach. And we're going to feel the inhales and the exhales. So we're going to feel our chest rising and falling. We're going to establish this strong breathing pattern. And remember it as we go through our practice today. So if you feel your mind drifting, just come back to this. Come back to your breathing. We're going to place our hands back on our knees, and we're going to start to add some movement to connect our body to our breath. So we're going to start with some seated cat and cows. So we're going to inhale, lift our chest, squeeze our shoulder blades, and exhale, release everything back to cat. We're tucking our tailbone, and then inhale, rise. And then after your next inhale, we're going to come back to center and we're going to start to do some torso circles or Sufi grinds. So you're going to start in a nice neutral position, keeping your posture nice and tall, hands on your knees. And then on the inhale, we're going to roll forward with our body, squeezing our shoulder blades, and then exhale, roll back, tucking everything in, releasing our shoulder blades, getting a nice stretch in our back. Inhale to the front, exhale back. This is really good at just awakening your spine, getting it ready for all the movements today. And just connecting it with your breath and your mind. And then on the next inhale, we're going to come back to center. You're going to flip your legs just the other way. And we're going to start to go the other direction. So if you're going to the right, we're going to go to the left now, or vice versa. Still inhaling, squeezing our shoulder blades together. Exhaling, releasing them, pushing them apart. this direction, and then come back to center. Beautiful. All right, so we're gonna roll up now, plant our hands on our mat, and we're gonna come into a nice tabletop position. We want our hips to be right over top of our knees, shoulders right over top of our wrists. And again, we're gonna do a couple more cat and cows in the tabletop position. Really just opening up our hips and our spine and just starting to really connect our breath with our movements. You can maybe move your hips side to side if that feels good. Whatever feels good for your body at the moment. And then we're going to come back to center. We're going to flip our toes, push our hips up into downward facing dog. Pushing our hips nice and high, trying to get our ankles to touch the floor, pushing in that direction. If your legs are super tight, you can maybe walk your dog, bending in the knee, maybe swaying your hips side to side. Just listen to your body, listen to what it's asking for in this moment. We're then going to focus our gaze in between our hands, slowly walk our feet up in between. We're going to come into a nice forward fold. Legs can be bent if they need to be. Just really releasing everything, letting gravity just kind of pull our weight down to the ground. Feeling the stretch in the back of your legs. And then on your inhale, we're going to slowly start to roll up. Very, very slowly. You want to roll up almost vertebrae by vertebrae. Your neck should be the last thing that rolls up into standing. Beautiful. All right, we're going to start now into our sun salutations. So we're going to come into a nice strong mountain pose. Feet hip distance apart. And then on your inhale, we're going to rise, circle up with your arms. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, come halfway. Exhale, plant your hands, step back into high plank. Take a nice inhale. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. We're then going to flip our toes, push our hips back up into downward facing dog. We're going to take 5 breaths here. Beautiful. We're going to focus our gaze in between our hands, walk our feet up in between. We're going to come inhale halfway. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, rise. Beautiful. We're going to do 2 more. So we're going to inhale, rise up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, come halfway, flatten back. Exhale, plant your hands, step back into high plank. Exhale, chaturanga, keeping our arms nice and tight to our sides. Inhale, upward dog. Exhale, flipping our toes, coming back into downward facing dog. We're going to take a couple more breaths here. As we warm up and we start to feel our heart rate maybe just start to increase, just focus on your breath again in these downward facing dogs. Making sure we're still having that nice, strong breath that we had in the beginning. We're then going to focus our gaze in between our hands. Step or hop your feet in between. Inhale, come halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, rise. Hands to the side. Beautiful. We're going to do one more. We're going to do it at your own pace. So we're going to meet back in downward facing dog, but really just focus on connecting your breath and your movement to your own speed of your own breath. So we're going to inhale, rise. Beautiful. We're going to take one more breath here. And then we're going to take our right leg. We're going to put in between our hands, lower the left leg down as we come into low lunge. So in here, we want to focus on bending that front leg. You want your knee to be right over top of your ankle. Your knee should be at a nice 90-degree angle. So we're pushing into that right leg, keeping our hips nice and square to the front of the mat. Taking a few breaths here. Beautiful. And then we're going to straighten that right leg. If you need blocks, feel free to use them as we put our hands right by our right foot and we release down into half split. So we're feeling that stretch in the back of our right leg. Feeling our hips open up in your right hip. Keeping our hips still nice and square though. You don't want to be sinking in too far into that left leg and left side. Beautiful. All right, so we're gonna bend back into that right leg, push up onto your left foot, and then we're gonna slowly rise into warrior two. So keeping that left leg nice and bent like we did in our low lunge. Squeezing, our hips are facing the long side of our mat now. Arms are nice and strong. We're breathing here as we feel our hips beginning to open and stretch out. We're then going to take our right arm, hinge it onto our right knee as we come over into side angle. So you want your left side all to be in one straight line. We're still bending, pushing into that right leg. Nice and strong posture. You don't want to be collapsing too far into your knee. Just nice and strong. Remembering to breathe. As we exhale, we're going to windmill our arms down onto our mat. Hips become square to the front side of our mat. And we're going to push our our right leg up into three-legged dog. We're opening up our hips, staying strong in our downward facing dog. Breathing here. Beautiful. We're going to release our right leg down. Focus our gaze in between our hands. Walk your feet in between. Nice flatten halfway. Exhale, we're going to forward fold. Inhale, rise. Beautiful. So we're going to do that same thing on our left side now. So we're going to inhale, rise up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, come halfway. Exhale, plant your feet or hands, step your feet back into high plank. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, upward dog. Flip the toes, come back into downward facing dog. So just like we did the right side, we're gonna take our left leg, put our foot in between our hands, lower that right leg down as we come into low lunge. So we're pushing our hips forward, keeping our knee right over top of our ankle. Hips are nice and square, chest is nice and high. Beautiful. We're going to straighten that left leg, hinge at the hips as we come into half split. If you need blocks, please feel free to use them. I'm going to feel nice and comfortable in this position, but still feeling that nice stretch in the back of your leg. Beautiful. We're going to bend back into our left leg. Right foot comes up. And we're going to slowly rise again into our warrior two position. Opening up our hips to the long side of your mat. Arms nice and strong, pushing into that left knee. We're then going to hinge our left arm. Right arm comes over top of our head for side angle. Breathing here, keeping a nice bend in that left leg, nice and strong, opening up the hips, and then we're going to windmill our arms down, squaring our hips back to the front of the mat, and then we're going to push that left leg back into three-legged dog. Breathing here, feeling our hips as they're opening, stretching out the back of our legs. Beautiful. We're going to come back down into downward dog. And then we're going to bend our legs, come into a wide hip stance as we come into child's pose. We're going to open up the hips here. Reestablish our breathing a little bit before we start our next flow. We're going to release from child pose, come back into downward facing dog. Walk our hands back up in between our feet. Slowly roll up to standing. If you need some water, feel free to do so before we start our next flow. So we're going to start in the standing pigeon pose. So you're going to shift your weight over to your left side. It can be at the front of your mat. And then you're going to take your right foot. Your right foot hugs the outside of your left hip. So the weight of your leg, of your right leg, is pushing down, and then you begin to squat into that left leg. Chest is lifted high. Hands can come to heart center. If you need to use the wall, feel free to do so. So that way you can focus more on your hips opening than balancing. I'm gonna take a couple more breaths here. into a high lunge. Hands can be above the head as we're pushing into that front leg again. Opening up our hips, opening up our chest, lifting our heart, focusing on that breath. Beautiful. We're going to straighten that front leg now. We're going to release, hinge at the hips, come into pyramid pose. If you need blocks in this pose, feel free to grab some. Feel free to use them. Breathing on the exhale. Maybe trying to sink deeper into this pose, deeper into that front leg. Beautiful. We're going to plant our hand, step our feet back into downward dog. And then we're going to slowly walk our feet up in between our hands. Slowly roll up to standing. Beautiful. We're now going to do that on the other side. So we're going to shift our weight over to our right side. Slowly begin to get our left foot into our right hip. Maybe holding onto a wall, finding a spot to help you balance. Hands come to heart center. And we bend into that right leg. Breathing here, feeling the stretch in our hips as they open. Lifting our chest. One more breath. Release that left leg, step it back into high lunge. Arms come up above your head. Heart and chest is lifted. You're sinking into that front leg, pushing in. Really going to straighten that front leg, release down into pyramid pose. On the exhale, sinking deeper into this pose, really feeling that stretch in the back of our legs. Beautiful. We're going to step that foot back, come into downward facing dog. Breathe here, and then slowly walk your feet up in between your hands. And then we're going to slowly rise back up to standing. Beautiful. We're going to add on to that a little bit now. So we're going to come back onto our left leg, do our standing pigeon pose again. So we're going to raise that left foot, comes into the inner hip. We're lifting our chest, sinking down into that left leg. Maybe we notice we're a little stronger this time. Now that our hips are really starting to warm up, our legs are really starting to warm up, our bodies are. We're breathing. Beautiful. We're going to step that foot back again into high lunge. This time we're going to release our hands back, intertwine our fingers, and we're going to come into a back bend slightly. So we're lifting our chest really, really high, squeezing our shoulder blades together. here. And then we're going to straighten that front leg, hinge at the hips again, and this time we're letting our arms and shoulders come over our head. Really squeezing into that front leg, feeling our shoulders stretch now. Beautiful. We're going to release our arms down. And this time, we're going to come into lizard pose. So our hands are going to be on the inside of our left foot. We're bending our right leg down. And we're coming down to our elbows. So we're stretching out our hips now really, really, really far. If you need blocks, feel free to use them. You can do any variation pose of lizard that you would like. Maybe rolling out the left foot to the side, extending the left arm out, pushing the leg out, really stretching our hips out now. Breathing here as you stretch. Beautiful. We're going to plant our hands down again. Come back up, push that leg back up into downward facing dog. Breathe here. We're then going to take our left leg, plant it in between our feet. And we're going to push up into that left leg. We're going to challenge ourselves here a little bit. And we're going to come into standing split. So you're going to push up onto your left leg. Right leg comes into the air. It doesn't matter how high your right leg is. What matters is we're stretching out our hips, feeling them open, making sure they're square with our mat. Maybe practicing your balancing here, maybe lifting one hand onto your leg, focusing on breathing here, making sure you're not holding your breath. Challenging yourself. Beautiful. We're going to step that right leg back. Left leg comes back to meet it. We're going to walk our feet up to our hands. Roll up into standing. Breathe. Maybe you feel your heart rate starting to rise. Maybe you're sweating a little bit. That's all good. All part of the process. So we're going to do that onto our right side now. So we're going to come on, shift our weight to our right side. Take our left leg, meet it with the inside of our right hip. Hands come to heart center. We're squatting into that right leg. Breathing, lifting our heart, lifting our chest. Pushing into that hip and left leg. Beautiful. We're releasing that left leg down, stepping back into our high lunge again. We're clasping our fingers, coming back into this nice back bend, squeezing your shoulders together, opening up your heart, opening up your chest. Maybe focusing your gaze up on the ceiling, or sky, wherever you might be. Still squatting into that front leg. Breathing. And then as we straighten our front leg out, we're going to hinge at the hips as our shoulders come behind us. Little shoulder stretch. Sinking into that front leg again. We're releasing our hands down to the mat. We're going to come into lizard pose again. So we're moving our hands to the inside of our right leg. That left knee comes down. Maybe elbows come down to the ground. Maybe you stay on your hands, whichever way you feel more comfortable with. We're sinking into those hips really now. We're breathing. On an exhale, sinking deeper maybe. Maybe rolling our right foot out, pushing our right knee with our right hand away from our body, sinking into those hips really. Connecting it with your breath. Beautiful. We're going to come back up onto our hands. Flip the toe, come back into downward facing dog. Breathe here. Before we take that right foot, place it in between our hands. And then again, push up into that standing split. Really challenge yourself here. Focus on your balance. Focusing on keeping those hips square. We're not sinking in, rolling our body over. It doesn't matter about how high your left leg is. If you're perfectly in a standing split. Maybe playing with moving your hands onto your ankles. Or not. And that is completely fine too. Maybe using blocks if you need to. Whatever feels good to you. And then we're going to release that left leg down, step our right foot back to meet it. Sink into that downward facing dog. Go back to that breath. We're going to take 5 breaths here. If you need to come down child's pose, feel free to do so. We're just going to go back to that breath. Beautiful. From here, we're going to take our left leg. We're going to come up into a 3-legged dog. We're going to open up our hips here. Maybe take some hip circles if you want to, if that feels good. Changing the direction, going in that other way. And then we're going to take that left leg and we're going to come back into lizard pose. Stretching out our hips one last time. Keeping our arms straight maybe this time before we come into pigeon pose. So really sinking into those hips. And then we're going to take that left leg. It comes straight across. Hips come down, right leg comes down. We're going to come up into a nice, strong pigeon pose. Breathing, lifting our chest. And then we're going to exhale, walk our hands down. Maybe stacking your forearms on top of each other, resting your forehead on top. If you need to use blocks to rest your forehead on, you can do so as well. We're really just breathing into this pose. Beautiful. We're going to come back up, releasing that left leg, maybe sinking back up into child's pose. Taking a couple breaths here as we start to cool down. gonna come back up. We're gonna flip our toes. We're gonna push our hips back up into downward dog. We're then gonna lift our right leg up into three-legged dog. Maybe take some hip circles here. Getting our hips ready for that pigeon pose. Going in the other direction now. Your hip circles can be small, they can be big, whatever feels good to you. And then we're gonna take that right leg. We're gonna come into lizard pose again. So right leg comes forward, hands come to the outside of it, or inside of it. Left leg comes down, pushing our hips out, sinking into this pose, breathing, and then we're gonna take that right leg again, stretch it in front of your body, hips come down as we come into pigeon pose again. So you're trying to lift your chest up nice and high. If you need to use blocks here to place your pelvis bones underneath, that is totally fine too. Whatever works for you. We're breathing here, lifting our chest. Before we exhale, walk our hands down, maybe stacking your forearms on top of each other, forehead comes, rests on top. We're breathing here, sinking those hips down, trying to keep them nice and square, making sure we're not sinking too far into that right side of the body. Beautiful. We're going to come back up. Release that right leg back out. We're going to sink back down into child's pose. Really breathing here. Sinking into those hips. Beautiful. We're going to come up and come into a nice cobbler's pose for our final pose today before we go into Shavasana. So we're just pushing our knees down, feeling our hips. Hopefully they're more open, feeling nice and stretched out after all those poses today. We're going to lift our chest nice and high. Exhale. We're going to sink down and release as far as you can, keeping that back nice and straight. Couple breaths here. And then on your next exhale, we're just going to release everything down. So your back can be rounded, your neck can be rounded. Whatever feels good to you. We're just releasing everything down, letting gravity take control. Beautiful. We're going to inhale, rise back up. We're going to release our legs out. Take any last poses you may need, anything your body is asking for, before release our whole body down into Shavasana. So our legs can be a little wider than our mat. Hands come to the side. As we just release our body. Release all the tension, all the stress. Just let it go. We're going back to that breath. Maybe feeling our heart rate start to go down a little bit. Feeling our body maybe cool down. Just slowing down our breath. Maybe doing a full body scan of just releasing any tension that may be in your body. Any aches and pains. Just breathing into those parts, letting them go. And if you feel your mind start to wander about other things, it's totally fine, totally normal. You just want to bring it back to your breath. Think about those inhales, exhales. Sinking deeper into your mat. Maybe start to bring awareness back into your body again when you're ready. Maybe wiggling your toes, your fingers, circling your hands, your feet. And then when you're ready, slowly rolling onto your side. Taking your time. There's no rush. And then when you feel ready, we can push up and come into a nice seated position. You can keep your eyes shut and relaxed. Hands can be on your knees or at your heart center. We're just focusing on our breath for one last time today before we go. Hopefully your body feels more connected with your mind, your breath. Hopefully your hips feel more open, your body feels more flexible. In yoga, we end with the word Namaste, which means the light in me honors the light in you. So with that, Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you come back. Yay! Thank you.